Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to a new video on this channel, and today we're going to talk about apply, bind and call. So in the previous video we left off with a small teaser of how to use apply. And also, if you are watching this video and I haven't watched the previous one, I'll leave a link in the description as well as in the I button. Go watch that and then come back. Okay, so let's start off with apply, bind and call, and why do we need them actually. So in the past video we saw that how this works in a function call, right? So what is the how to determine the value of this in a function. But sometimes in real life scenarios you have an object in JavaScript which has a particular function that you want to call, but you want to call it with your own context and not in that object's context, and that's what something we call as function borrowing in JavaScript, which you can do with bind, apply and call. So let's just start off with something really simple. Let's just say we have an car object and it has a function which is drive, which just prints out which just prints out console.log driving a car. You're driving. Let's just say it prints out driving. So if I say car.drive, it's gonna say driving. So let's just make a small change in the function and let's just say this prints out the name of the car that you are driving. Okay, now if I call the same method, it's gonna say undefined. So if you want to know why it says undefined, you just have to go through the last video I made. Say now we have another object which is say Tesla, which is a car, meaning it is a specific implementation of a car, and because it is a specific implementation, it has a name. Sorry, I just mistyped. Model 300. I think that's what Tesla's the latest one is called. I'm not that updated, and for now we'll just say it has just one property name, and we'll just declare this variable. Okay, now I want to call the function the function drive on the car object, and I have to use it with a different context. So there is a single implementation of the drive function, but I'll use it via different contexts. So say we have another object, we have another car, specific implementation of car, say a Lambo, and which has a name as Lambo. I know Lambo is a company and not the name of car, but let's just go with it. Come on. So now we have two cars, Tesla and Lambo. Both are specific implementations of car. Now don't think it in object oriented way. Tesla inherits property from car. Nothing like that. Just for the argument's sake, I'm saying that Tesla is a specific implementation of the car object. Now car has a method drive which is shared, or which can be implemented by both Tesla and Lambo because those are cars. Now I want to call the drive method on the car object but in the context of Tesla. So we'll use apply here, and I'll show how you borrow a method drive, or I'll show how you borrow a method from another object. So I'll just say car.drive. This is the syntax, and I'll say apply. And what you need to first pass is, as you can see, it is this.arg, which is the context. And if I want to call the drive method with the Tesla, with using the Tesla context or the Tesla object, I'll just pass in Tesla and it says driving model 300 because it picks up the property name from the object which is passed to the apply variable, to the apply function, not a variable, sorry, to the apply function. Cool, right? Now let's just say, and you can do the same thing with the Lambo object. And this is something which we call as method borrowing. I just say driving Lambo. Now let's just say I want to pass. So in mostly in real life scenarios, you just don't need to change the context. You need to call the same function, but with different parameters sent to the function. So let's just modify the function and let's just say is electric, and depending upon this we'll set a variable. So if is electric, electric, we'll just say name var we can say special is equal to electric. Now we have a function drive. Now takes in a parameter is electric. Now let's just try to call it with the Tesla context, and this is how you pass a variable to the drive function, which is borrowed from the car object but run via the Tesla context in the Tesla context, and that's how you do it. And that's what it prints out, driving model 300 electric. Now if I say false, it's gonna say nothing. So nothing is special about it. So it just says driving model 300, nothing. And that's how you pass a argument using apply. Okay, now let's just talk about the difference between apply and call. So with apply, if you need to pass an argument, you had to pass it as an array, right? But with call, you have to pass it as simple argument list. So if I do this, it's gonna print electric, but if I pass false, it says driving model 300, and we get the same output as we did with apply. Why people use apply over call is basically when you are using call, you need to actually define the number of variables that need to be passed. But in case of apply, you can pass an array which can be constructed by you and then passed to the function. So it is in your full control and it can be dynamically created, whereas in call you have to mention the number of arguments that you need to pass to the function that you're calling on the object, right? So that's basically the difference between call and apply, nothing else. Now let's just move on to bind, and when should you use bind and how do you use bind. So let's just remove this and let's just call bind and pass in the Tesla object. And as you can see, it returns a function. It doesn't take in an argument list, it returns a function, and it creates a copy of your existing function. So if I want to call it right away, I'll just do this and it will say nothing because I haven't passed anything to it. So if I pass say true, it's gonna say driving model 300 electric, because true is passed to the function, and then if is electric is true, special is equal to electric, and thus it prints out. Let's move on to a more an example where I've used apply. I haven't used bind, but I've used apply. So this is something that I want to show you. Let me just move it to my own screen now. Okay, so that you guys can see. So this is This is a small validation form that I've made in HTML, bare bones HTML with some JavaScript. And this is basically email validation, and this is not precise. It just looks for the @ symbol and just says that this is an email address. So this is not at all fine-tuned. This is just a bare bones example to show you how apply and bind work. So if I say ABC at ABC, it will say a valid email address. Now if I say com, it will probably say it's invalid because there are some validations that I need to put, but you get the point, right? So this is basically what the code does. Nothing special, but this is what runs under the hood. We have an email address, and I'm using jQuery because it's simple to understand. Okay, so I'm searching for my email div, which is this, which is the input box. You see right here. And we use apply here. Let me just make this a bit bigger so that you guys can see. And we use apply here, and we pass in the in JSDB, which is a simple object that I've created, which takes in a list of email IDs, and we pass in the context and we pass in the value, and we call the validation. We call the validate email function on the validation object. So there are three things which are happening here. First, we are using apply. We are sending the context, and we are sending the context along with an argument, and we are calling it on the validation object, which is not the current object. Which the current object is window object. We are borrowing the method validate email, which is on the validation object, and we are using it to validate the email. Okay, so let's just look at what really runs when I type in something. So if I type in an A, it comes in the validate email, but if you check in this, it's gonna be that of this. It's gonna be that of in JSDB, because that's the context which we are sending via the apply method. And let me just show you this. Okay, so now this is called, validate email is called. It checks whether it contains, and this dot email IDs is actually this property, because this is the context in JSDB is sent to the apply method. So this dot email IDs is this. Okay, and it checks for it and it returns false. So this is basically how you can use apply, and in the same way you can use call. But when do you use bind? So when I say validation.validate email, it directly runs the function validate email. But what if I want to store it and run it after after some time or after something happens? So that's where bind comes in. Let me just add another event on this, and I'll show you how bind works. Okay, I have this simple example where I've used bind, and I have this function called alert user, which which creates a message which says alerted and this dot name, and I've defined a user object with name property as Elon. So alter user dot bind returns a function which in turn is called when I click on the object. So JavaScript registers the function returned by this as the function to run when clicking on the button. And this is what happens when I say alert. It says alerted Elon. Now if I put a breakpoint, you might be able to see what I mean. So when I say alerted, this dot name is Elon, because this is the user object, because this method is bound by the user object, right? This is how we use bind, apply, and call in JavaScript. So if you have any questions, if you feel that you are more confused after watching this video, in that case I failed 100%. But if you feel you have any questions, do let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer your questions. If I have said something which is wrong, please also correct me in the comments below, because I'm not always 100% correct. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the like button. It helps a lot. And that's it for this video. JavaScript series will continue. Next video will probably come out by next week. Till then, have fun, happy coding.